Hi, this is Jen Duke, and I'm talking with you about Module 16, EDL 854, the case study. This case involves a discrepancy in the collection of activity funds after the last home basketball game of the season. The money that was collected doesn't match with the records that were turned in by the parent volunteer who was collecting the money at the door. And with the knowledge that Mr. Stevens had that a $50 bill had been part of the proceeds and was now not part of the final deposit, this creates the issue. So what do you know? First, we know that changes in population and socioeconomic status have occurred at George Washington Middle School, but parent involvement remains strong. Mr. Stevens, who is the principal, has no assistant principal, relies a lot on the parent volunteers. Mrs. Bowman, one of those parent volunteers that Mr. Stevens relies on frequently, recently requested PTA monies from Mr. Stevens for her daughter to attend a national cheerleading event and was turned down after multiple attempts by her because Mr. Stevens said that that's not what the money from PTA should be used for. We also know that then Mrs. Bowman volunteered at that last basketball game and was collecting money at the door. Simultaneously, Mr. Stevens talked with Mr. Dumas, who mentioned he used a $50 bill to pay for entry. And at the end of the night, when Mrs. Bowman gave the bank bag to Mr. Stevens with the funds from the door, the ticket proceeds did not match with the ticket accounting record, and there was no $50 bill as part of the deposit. So having said all of that, now we know that the problem is, where are those missing funds? How have they become missing? And where is that potential $50 bill that was claimed to be used to pay at the door? What do we need to know? Well, we know that the Booster Club requests 2 parents to help at concessions and 2 parents to help at the gate. So who was that second parent that was volunteering with Mrs. Bowman that night? Who collected the money from Mr. Dumas specifically? Could Mr. Dumas have been mistaken when he discussed the denomination with which he had paid? Could he have thought it was a $50 bill and maybe it was a $20? Did the ticket numbers match up with the tickets left to be secured? Could there have been an error when Mrs. Bowman or her fellow volunteer reported the ticket numbers that were used at the game? So, plan of action. First, I would have the security guard who went with me to take the deposit and confirm the money. I would have him confirm my findings regarding the miscount in activity funds and the unaccounted for $50 bill. The next morning, I would call and get advice from my supervisor or from an adjoining school's administrator that I trusted. Then I would confirm with the Booster Club who the other parent volunteer was that was scheduled to work with Mrs. Bowman that night collecting money at the door. Next, I would call Mr. Dumas and ask if he could tell me, 1, which parent volunteer took his money at the game, and then if it could be possible that he could have used another denomination and been mistaken about that $50 bill. Then once I confirmed which parent volunteer had served Mr. Dumas, if it were the other volunteer, I would call that parent and ask if they remembered receiving such a large denomination for ticket payment. If after these conversations it was determined that Mr. Dumas claims he did indeed pay with a $50 bill and there was still a clear discrepancy in funds, I would set up meetings with both parent volunteers who worked the door in order to try and find out some answers. And last, without any specific concrete evidence, I would reevaluate how parent volunteers are utilized and in future situations would find more effective ways to supervise activities involving money. Some of the strategies that I would be using as a leader to solve the problem would be, number 1, utilizing the expertise and advice of my supervisor or another principal would prove that I don't claim to have all the answers and wish to be supported by other leaders around the community who might be able to help me resolve this issue effectively. Then just communicating effectively with the community stakeholders is an important part of resolving this case strategically, because especially for this middle school in particular, The community support is so high, and it needs to remain that way, and the respect and support of the community is important. And then the final strategy would just be operating with diligence and fairness, because when you need to respond to a discrepancy, it's the best way to handle things for students, staff, and the community. The resolution is best for students because this community is very supportive and willing to volunteer to support school activities, even with the decline in population and socioeconomic status. And it's important to solve this case with respect to that community. And Mr. Stevens has a great relationship with the Booster Club and PTA leaders, and those stakeholders help create a positive environment for students and are needed, especially being that he has no assistant principal. Finally, the resolution is appropriate because Mr. Stevens had many safeguards in place in order to track the misuse of funds, including having the security guard accompany him, the pre-numbered tickets, and the ability to assess the concession stand inventory. So having these safeguards in place allowed him to quickly determine that there could potentially be a misuse of funds and to investigate it in a fair manner. The things I was thinking and valuing and considering throughout the case were first thinking about better ways as a principal without an assistant to set up supervision for students, but still be able to oversee the handling of money as efficiently as possible. I was grateful for the community support, and I was wondering how could we provide more support to students outside of the school who might need it. So for instance, when Mrs. Bowman came to talk to Mr. Stevens about needing help potentially to send their daughter to the cheerleading event, how can we help? What are different ways that I could have helped in that fashion so that we might not be in this position? And then finally, is there a way that, is there a different way to work with Booster Club and PTA in a more effective and efficient way, not only to help the community outside of school, but also just in utilizing volunteers and things of that nature? Which would bring me to these three unresolved issues. First, how to find the balance between overseeing volunteers and money during events, but still being able to do the other duties of a principal, like supervise students during those activities when you don't have an assistant principal to help you with that. Again, is there more support then that can be done to support those students who might need it for other reasons outside of school so that they can be successful and we can continue to promote their success, whether it's academic or socially, outside of school? And then potential modifications to parent volunteers and procedures. For example, maybe pairing up when collecting money. So two parents working together, one tracking tickets and one handling the money. So just including more checks and balances than what might have already been there. So Standard 8 is an educational leader promoting the academic success and personal well-being of every student by ensuring effective and efficient management of the school or district to promote social and academic learning. So being that this case study is about that, and as an educational leader, how to do that, I'm going to talk with you about each of those components. Component 1, the strength of the original safeguards that were in place prior to the actual missing funds were there to ensure accountability. But then reviewing those procedures to determine if there's even a better way proves effective management. Working more closely with Booster Club and PTA would help efficiently manage resources that we had for the school. And then denying Mrs. Bowman's request for PTA funds in the first place was appropriate, but again, what else could I have done as the principal to help their daughter in that situation? Component 2. So recognizing Lucy's cheerleading accomplishments during daily announcements did promote social learning and prove that as an educational leader that Mr. Stevens was acknowledging that success for her, for the whole student body. And then supervising and interacting with students during school activities is a big part of promoting social learning as a leader. And then maintaining strong community involvement and interacting with parents in a positive and fair manner also promotes that. And it the conversations and communication that I would have in the resolution process, and then just also communicating with parents during the event, and just appreciating their volunteering in the first place, promotes the social learning of students and families. And then component 3, not disrupting the daily routine of students' learning while I was investigating the case would promote academic learning. Protecting school funds by following procedures related to activity funds, and then taking the time to reevaluate safeguards promotes the academic integrity of the school, because those funds are meant for the students and what their needs are related to school. And then finally, following the PTA money's guidelines to ensure fairness and proper use of school funds promotes academic learning so that there wouldn't be any disruptions to the community. Thank you, and I hope this resolution to the case study was effective.